As far as I can tell, no evidence or reasoning was ever offered to rationally conclude that we should go to war with Iraq. The president failed to prove that Saddam planned to use weapons of mass destruction against us. We haven't even found weapons of mass destruction, much less proof that Saddam intended to use them against us. The president and the other proponents of the war also failed to explain why nation building should be considered a responsibility of the federal government. The president never explained why he had been mistaken when, as a presidential candidate, he had argued against nation building and had mocked the idea of a nation building corps of America, something he is now presiding over. Furthermore, the president did not foresee that Iraq would be like a tar baby. The more we deal with it, the more mucked up and bogged down we get. The president did not foresee the consequences of the war. Before you make up your mind on whether we should have invaded Iraq, you should give yourself the opportunity to consider all the negative consequences resulting from the war and the change in policy. Here are some of the answers offered by our guests. What negative consequences do you think there will be?
I think that American forces who are there, young men and women, may die.
I have never seen such hatred of the United States. The intensity of the hatred right now among moderate Arabs is quite extraordinary. So I see a prolonged period of hit-and-run guerrilla warfare.
Is the war on Iraq detracting from the war on terrorism?
Well, I never quite understood how we switched from the war on terror to the war on Iraq without missing a beat. But what's just happened is bound to drive Iraqi extremists or the remnants of the Saddam regime into the arms of Al-Qaeda.
The American people would be safer without invading Iraq, because the wrong message goes if we invade Iraq. Because the message then is, and this is what Osama bin Laden is trying to play on, and he clearly indicated in the last statement that I heard him say that he has nothing to do. He called Saddam Hussein an infidel. But what it will do is he then will try to make this to be a war against Muslims and Islam.
Do you think that we'll have to pay more taxes as a result of this war?
Without any question. The tax cuts have already been severely reduced. Eventually, I think, will have to be eliminated. The deficit is growing by leaps and bounds. The advance payment on the war is $75 billion. Congress added another $5 billion. That's only for 6 months. By the time we're through with all of this, it will be well over $200 billion in my judgment.
Each time we intervene militarily in other countries preemptively, we create enemies in that country. Is that not so?
Well, not only enemies, but look at the wreckage that has already been caused. If you look at the geopolitical landscape, you will see nothing but wreckage of institutions that have been taken decades to build. Look at NATO, torn asunder, the European Union torn asunder, the cornerstone of the transatlantic partnership is the German-American alliance, torn asunder.
Is the cornerstone of international law respecting other countries' national sovereignty, and when we do preventive or preemptive attacks, military attacks, are we not undermining that fundamental principle that has helped world peace?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that one of the negative consequences is that more countries will follow our example and do preemptive strikes on their enemies?
It is a danger, a distinct danger. If you look at the situation between Pakistan and India, I've been arguing for a long time that that was far more serious, is far more serious than anything Saddam was threatening the world with.
You recall when India massed its troops on the border with Pakistan, our position was that they should show restraint and not do any attacking. Now we are, in effect, reversing that policy and doing exactly what we requested them not to do. Isn't that a double standard that's not going to hold?
Of course it's a double standard, and incidentally the people who were most active in promoting a war on Iraq now wish to go on and do something about Iran.
Will more nations go nuclear to prevent future U.S. interventions?
I think it's inevitable. the ultimate badge of power is the nuclear badge.
So our interventionist policy is actually stimulating nuclear proliferation and therefore making the world less safe.
You could draw that conclusion.
And that could be really dangerous for all Americans if there was a nuclear holocaust.
Yes.
If, for example, we did the contrary, if we had a non-interventionist policy, countries could be assured that we were going to respect their national sovereignty even if we disagreed with their regimes, then they would not see a need to obtain nuclear weapons.
That could also be a conclusion drawn from the arguments that you make.
Sometimes a good way to understand how other people feel is to put the shoe on your own foot and see how it feels. How do the Americans, or how would the Americans feel if other countries intervene in our internal politics? For example, how did they feel when China was alleged to have made some campaign contributions? What was the reaction of the American public?
Well, as you know, it was very negative. We don't like it when people interfere here.
We can't get away with these double standards forever because double standards always catch up to you. Is that not right?
You're correct.
Just for the record, here's a short list of the double standards we're trying to get away with. It's okay for us to attack preemptively, but other countries like Israel or India shouldn't. It's okay for us to have troops and bases all around the world, but other countries shouldn't have any here. It's okay for us to have nuclear weapons, but other countries shouldn't. It's okay for us to intervene in the internal affairs of other countries, but other countries shouldn't intervene in ours. Why do you think we have so many double standards in our foreign policy? How and why did we arrive at a contradictory foreign policy that led us to invade Iraq in spite of all the negative consequences? The reason is simple. Our leaders are not reasoning properly on the subject. We should take a moment to examine the cause of the flaws in the reasoning so we don't make the same mistake again and again on this subject, or for that matter, on any other.